Okay, hello, everyone. I will be calling the Community Homeless Advisory Board meeting to order. And we're going to start with a salute to the flag. And I'd like Mayor Lawson to lead it.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call?
Alexis Hill, Chair.
Here.
Ed Lawson, Vice Chair. Bob Lucy is absent. Naomi Jordan on the phone.
Here.
Devin Reese.
Here.
Christopher Dare.
Here.
And we have Herb Kaplan from the DA's office. Madam, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And we'll start with public comment. I'll throw it back to you, Madam Clerk.
For item number 3, I have Alfonso Searles.
Hi, my name is Alfonso Searles.
It's not, it won't.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, my name is Alfonso Searles. I'm here to tell everyone that the Care Campus was very good and very happy. I have stayed there for a while. My counselor, Nicole Recazone, she's a very good person. And now I'm at the village on Sage. It's very good. I like LaDonna and Devin and everyone else there. It's a very good place. I've enjoyed my life living there, and I've been there for about 5 months. So I enjoy coming here and speaking to you people about this campus and everything else. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have nobody else signed in.
Okay, thank you very much. May I have well, next up we have the minutes. Do we have any changes by the board, or may I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you from Councilmember Reese. Do I have a second? Second from Vice Chair Lawson. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is a action item, but for the record, there is no public comment.
Thank you for reminding me. I appreciate that. Next up is the City of Reno Rental Assistance Portal presentation. Monica Cochran from the City of Reno. This is a non-action item. Hello.
Good morning. I have there it is. Sorry. Good morning, Monica Cochran for the record. I just have a brief presentation overview of the deposit assistance, rental assistance program that we offer at the City of Reno, and a little bit about the portal. Am I going to do the slides, or how's this going to work? Sorry. And I forgot my glasses.
Who's doing the slides, Madam Clerk? Okay. There we go.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
First, I wanted to give you a little update about what the program is and what it is not. What we offer is rental and deposit assistance. We can do application fees. We can do utility assistance, water, power, gas. What our program does not offer is motel assistance. We are not a housing service to help people find housing. If they have secured a place, they can enter their information into our portal, get approved, and we can pay a deposit and or rent, or if they're behind, they have to have a lease, things like that. We're not legal services. We refer people to WASHA Legal Services. I do have several staff members that work on this program, and I have a few that are really good at helping some folks that are having problems navigating the system and are having problems finding places. So case by case, we can handhold a lot of folks. We have 3 different funding sources, and back in 2020 we expanded the program because we got some additional funds that we did not have in the past. And there gets to be some confusion sometimes that people believe it's all one program, and it's not. So there's questions that are asked in the portal because they pertain to each of the funding sources. So we want people to answer, and then we can assess what funding source that we would use. For instance, we have ESG funding, the Emergency Solutions Grant. We can help folks with AMIs up to 30% on that. That offers 3 months of assistance, and we cannot exceed FMR on that. That is within the city of Reno. We use trust funds. Those AMIs can go up to 60%. It's also 3 months. And again, on this program, we cannot go over 100% of FMR. And we can give assistance all through Washoe County with those funds. And then they have some other requirements that you've had to have lived in the state of Nevada for 2 years. And these are requirements of our funding sources. The last is the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Those are the ERAP funds that we hear a lot about that came through the Treasury and different legislation. With those, we can actually go up to 80% AMI, and we can help for a maximum of 15 months. With these, there has to be some impact from the pandemic. Pretty easy to prove. It could be a variety of different circumstances. Oops, wrong way, sorry. I just wanted to give a little brief overview of how much money we have been getting out. As you can see, we've had a huge jump this last year. We got another round of the ERAP funds, and you can see in the graph to the left is funding, and if you look at Q1 of 20 over this last quarter, we increased 55%, and if you look at Q2, it was 220%. So that's how much money that we got out just in Q2. That coincides with the graph on the right, which shows kind of very similar percentages, but these are the the months of assistance that we provided in those quarters. So if somebody wants to apply, we changed this a couple years ago. It used to be pretty much a hand paper process. We procured this software, Neighborly software. It's pretty easy to use. I know sometimes there could be a few challenges with it. There's different languages that you can use. It's mobile friendly. You can do it all on a smartphone. If people cannot get into this, they can pick up applications and either mail or deliver them to City Hall. I have staff that will meet with them, bring them up, help them fill out their paperwork, upload whatever they need. And once the applications get in, they kind of go into a pipeline. Right now I am down 1 staff member, and I think probably in line with, because RHA has a similar program, and I believe that they have about a month pipeline also. We're pretty in line with that. We used to be down to 2 weeks, but with the increased demand and 1 staff member, there's a little bit of a wait. But they go into a pipeline, and then somebody calls them, goes through their application, tries to figure out what funding source they qualify for, and then we go for that. Once they are approved, if we do a disbursement by Wednesday, the check is cut to the landlord on the following Friday. We do have cases where it's kind of an emergency, and we will send a promissory note to a landlord just to keep somebody stably housed or get them in somewhere just while the check is getting processed through our finance department. And then you can find this on reno.gov/housing. There's some different tiles, if you will, on there, and it'll say looking for rental assistance. You click on that, and it takes you right to the application. Back on January 27th, we had a training opportunity. We circulated a flyer through the raw listserv that we were going to hold this training on the Neighborly software to help folks try to get through it and show how they can help their clients get through it. We had 22 participants. We went through an application. It was a review. We completed a sample application, and we had a Q&A session on that. This is information if anybody needs to email or call if they have a question about their application, and somebody answers this line or responds back to this email. And that is all I have. Is a pretty short update, but I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Yes, I like the sound of all this. Thank you for sharing. I know that we're over in Sparks, and you said it hits the whole Washoe County area. I say
For-
that, so is this for the whole Washoe County area, or mainly, and it's not bad if it is, I'm just trying to make sure I understand, for residents of Reno only, or?
We have 3 funding sources, and 2 of them are to be used in the city of Reno, and then one of them, we can use them in Sparks, unincorporated areas, and in the city of Reno. As far, for the ERAP funds, for the city of Sparks, I believe that RHA is administering those for
Gotcha.
Sparks. And then they also have funds from the state. Our first allocation, we did award a large percentage of ours to RHA to administer also. But the second round, we knew with a need that we could administer those, so we kept those in-house. So those are for the city of Reno.
Thank you. Are we also finding that we have enough, I mean, are we running out of housing like we felt like we were before when you're doing this? Are you guys getting to a place that maybe we have money to help get people in places, but we don't have places to put them? Are we not finding that? What are we learning there?
I think that's definitely a concern, but this program isn't a housing placement. It is for people that have secured housing. But I do believe that there are a certain demographic of folks that are harder to get into housing. I know with our rapid rehousing program that we have 2 nonprofit providers that we contract with, and they've had a real hard time, so we've had to be really creative, offering bonuses for those landlords, triple deposits, things like that, to try to get those folks housed.
Gotcha, good job. And my final thing, I just want to thank you for doing the education pieces. I always feel that's our role to do if we can get our community involved and know how to use the tools we have. So good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cochran. Briefly, I just want to understand a little bit more about the last part of the presentation that had to do with, access, because I'm worried about people who don't have consistent internet access, Wi-Fi, a phone. I just want to know, how do people who don't have the technology resources to access the program, what are their options, and how might we make it easier? Obviously, we're balancing the competing needs of kind of trying to avoid fraud, trying to avoid or to try and comply with various federal requirements about reporting. On our side of the house, we have auditing requirements. So I understand there's an element of it which is related to that, being able to track information, provide results-based outcomes, think about auditing and all of that. But how do we manage that with the fact that, some people just need more assistance in finding those things? I think the layers of complexity when a person is navigating systems that have been set up to help them can often be a deterrent. And it worries me because it's not just this program, but generally a person who might be experiencing the need to use this program are also actively involved in other aspects of the social services safety system. And so, being required to do all of these things multiple times and then go from agency to agency and to have the documents that they need to be able to accomplish the task, what can we do to reduce barriers to access?
I think generally, at least with this program, bringing that human aspect into it has really helped. I have, like I said, some staff members, they actually will meet people and help fill out the application, help kind of get through some of those barriers. Some of the documents that may be required, trying to find alternatives for them, they will sit with somebody at the computer and help them fill it out. I have a staff member that goes down to community court and will walk people through the application and help get them whatever they need for that. So that human contact and the paper applications and allowing people to come and fill out an application with a staff member or meet them somewhere, I think. Also, we've kind of walked through with caseworkers from different organizations that might be working with someone. They'll call us and say, I'm trying to help Joe fill out an application. Can you give me some information? And we'll work with those caseworkers. So just kind of not just leaving it all to an online portal where there's no human contact. I think that has really helped.
Well, and I guess I'd like to ask, because you mentioned the community court, so that meets in the basement of the Washoe County Library.
Correct.
So great program, and there are computers there. But, I mean, that's just one location, right? And of course, I think there are also advocates in the community who are not sort of officially aligned with any particular nonprofit, and they're trying to help people navigate these portals and resources too. And of course, they're doing that on their own time, and they're not being paid to do it. So it's both of those things, I suppose, that's important. One of the slides also, I had a question about, and we don't have to go back to the slide, but on an annual basis, do you reach a point during the year when you have exhausted all the funds in the program, and then there's like a period of time at the end of the year or mid-year or whenever that part is where there are no funds available? Because it's not an unlimited pool of money, and so I'm just trying to understand. The slide did a good example of showing what had been allocated and sort of more historically focused. I'm trying to figure out, as a practical matter, is there a moment in time when the funds are exhausted entirely? And either we've got to make additional commitments to the fund, or we've got to reallocate, or do we do it like on a monthly basis? Do we only allow so much funds to be used? Does my question make sense?
It does.
Okay.
And to date, that has not happened. And I'll give just the example of the ERAP funds. When we received the last allocation, I projected, based on the prior year spending, that those funds would last us about 3 years. But now, as you can see, with the amount that we're spending, I'm projecting that those funds will be exhausted probably by September. But the Treasury is recapturing funds from jurisdictions that's not using them. We put in a request for the first round of that. We did not receive an additional allocation, but they're on the ERAP 2. They're doing. They're going to be reallocating funds that were not used by other jurisdictions again, and they're using different criteria. I was just on a training last week, so I'm going to be requesting more funds for that. As far as the ESG and the Affordable Housing Trust funds go, those are allocations each year, and they just have different requirements. So we spend less of those, and so they last longer, and it's just very cyclical.
Thank you, Ms. Cochran. I guess I just was wondering, on the 1 month pipeline, does that mean 1 month before folks get to come into the office and get help from staff, or 1 month when checks are cut?
It's about a month before their application starts getting processed by a staff member.
Oh, okay.
I have, like I said, I was down one staff member. And
Right.
I'm hoping to have that position filled in the next few weeks and speed that up again, hopefully to at least about 3 weeks.
Great. And
We have,
I'm sorry.
I was
Go
going
on.
to say, we have, I think last week we had 1,600 applications in our portal.
Wow. So if folks can't fill out the application on the website, how long before they get an appointment with a staff person to help them through that paper?
Because they can come down to City Hall and get a paper application, and then it'll be this, they'll get in and be in the same, I guess, line, the same spot in line. It's just through a different mechanism.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, they can come pick one up, either ask for assistance, fill it out themselves, turn it in, and then they'll be entered in, and then they'll get into the pipeline that way.
And they can get assistance pretty quickly if
Yeah.
they come into
Yes,
City
and we
Hall.
have some situations where we've got, somebody was going to get locked out in that day, and we got a promissory note over to the landlord, and then they didn't get locked out.
Okay.
So because we have the phone line and an email address also, we're able to help folks in that manner too. It's just, those emergencies are becoming more common than rare.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I'm so glad that you are able to work so quickly to get folks the help that they need. Thank you so much for presenting on this program. So maybe even the people at home can learn about these opportunities, and I have a better understanding, that's for sure. Any other questions or comments by the board? Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Next up, a board update on Our Place. Amber Howell from Washoe County. This is a non-action item.
Good morning, Amber Howell for the record. I serve as the Director of the Washoe County Human Services Agency. And I'm going to wait for the presentation to come up. There it is. Okay, we haven't been in front of you to give you an update on our place in a while, and we've had a little bit of time under our belt, so really starting to see some trends and outcomes that I think will be helpful as we move forward. This is a map that you all have seen for many months. Since we've shown you this map, we have acquired 2 more homes, Home 5 and then the family and maternity home. So the family and maternity gave us 10 additional family rooms, and the Home 5 gave us, it's a risk reduction home, and that's 36 beds. So we were able to expand in those areas. You guys are all familiar with this timeline. I'll just fast forward us to the new homes. So on 12/20, the additional family home was opened. On 3/21, the risk reduction home was opened for 36 beds. In 6/21, we opened up 20 additional mental health beds, which I will go into a little bit more later on why we did that. Those are not on the Our Place site, but we have some pictures and some information to show you. And then we also opened a boutique called Our Place to Shine, where guests can go and get clothing and things that they need. It's an incentive for them as they work the program. This is Our Home for Women, so this is off-site. What we were finding was we had about 15 to 20 women at any given time that for no other reason, they just didn't have any other place to go, and so Our Place would have been their forever home. So we needed to find an alternative housing location that had continued mental health services, case management. They were doing very well in our program and, you know, for the most part living independently, and they were taking up 15 to 20 beds if we didn't have an alternative placement for them. So we started a pilot program with WellCare. And today we're at 19 are in that program. We've served 26 so far, and it has been great for us to open up more capacity at the Our Place shelter, but also give them a more long-term option than living at an emergency shelter for years on end. This is the Our Place to Shine boutique. This actually started with one plastic bin in a storage room. And what we have learned from a lot of the guests that come in, they come in with barely anything, and they don't have the support to have clothing for job interviews, or their children don't have any clothing, or for self-esteem purposes, giving them an opportunity to have makeup and clothes and new shoes and whatever they need. RISE employee does this full-time. I'm really proud of the work that they've done. Just giving our guests a feeling of themselves and taking good care of themselves. So this is up and running, and it's open to not only Our Place, but also TADS, our senior home, and all of Crossroads guests. We actually just got a huge donation from Reno Rodeo, so we get a lot of donations from the community and then big organizations like Reno Rodeo. We know how important pets has been to allow them to be in the shelter, and we've continued to be the home to a lot of pets. So in total, we've had 231 pets since we opened. We thought we'd just have cats and dogs, but they're also home to some turtles and lizards. So we've been able to pivot and allow them to come in too, and that's been working really successful. Here are some of the family shelter statistics that I think are important as we continue this work. 72 families have been served since opening, so that equates to 115 adults, 142 children. 2 pregnant women, and 9 of those individuals are involved also in the child welfare system. So that's really helpful for us as an agency because we have the child welfare piece. So 50% of our families have exited successfully, 64% exited with employment. We still have a high number of guests, as you can see, with substance abuse and mental health, so we have those services on site, and our family recidivism rate is only at 3%. Slide 8 is women's outcomes. So we have served 403 women, very similar mental health and substance abuse breakdown. We have a very high number of guests with disabilities at 51%. That's very high, showing us the need to get aging and disability services from the state involved and other community partners, because this isn't something that we're the experts at, and so it's been helpful to identify, where we need help from the community. And that 22% of the women have been chronically homeless, but 60% of them have engaged in case management, which is great. Here's the breakdown. We get asked this often, what the age group is. You can see 36% are 55 and older, and 33% are ages 35 to 45, and then under 34 years of age, 21%. And then the last number, the 4%, should be 3% for the 18 to 24-year-olds. So we have a very low number of that age group. This is just the breakdown of race. So women's shelter statistics, 40% have received case management, 59% have moved out successfully, and then our recidivism rate is at 24%, and so this is a really important number for us. Why the recidivism? Why didn't it work? What could we have done differently so that they didn't come back? And when we started digging into this number, some of it was they just weren't ready, so they came back, or we referred them to the Crossroads program or another type program, and they weren't ready, so they came back. But when we started digging into the numbers to do this presentation, there was 32 women total, and 18 of them have already moved back out again. So the intervention worked, and we're getting that number down to make sure that they don't have recidivism again. This was also really important to me and the team. When they exit, where are they going? I think it's important for us to know not only was it a successful exit, but where did they go? And so, as you can see, 56% of them moved out independently or with family and friends, which is great. The WellCare mental health placements is at 15%. Reunification with family, we have some incredible stories of families that were looking for their loved ones in other states, and we were able to reunify them by supporting and funding those efforts and case managing them to another state. So 9% of them were reunified with their family, which is great. And then 10% of them went into some type of program, substance abuse program, group home, that type of thing. And then at the bottom, you'll see only 1% went into a managed care organization, housing, or domestic violence shelter. So that's really an area we need to focus on, because we know that there are housing available through managed care organizations, and that number is really low. This is our risk reduction home that we have 36 beds. Just, I don't know if we've ever given this picture, so wanted to show you. This is our place, families, where the families stay. Our place, Home 4, is families in maternity. So we have families who have littles, 2 and younger, and infants, having them in a home instead of having various age groups helps moms who have new babies, and it's safer. So we made that change. This is the women's dorm that you've seen before. And this is the daycare, full every single day, 82 slots. Important to mention that when guests leave our place, they can still continue to use this daycare for their children, so their children don't have to go to a new place. Finally, I will just mention, because I know that there's going to be a presentation next month at CHAB, that HSA has been the implementer and the house for the MOST team, and we are transferring that to the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. Makes sense for us. Reno Police Department, Sparks Police Department have the MOST team, and so it's in a law enforcement agency, and then we would have had a hybrid. MOST would be with HSA, so we're transferring that to the Sheriff's Office just to have more regional consistency, so you'll be seeing that as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? Yes, Councilman Dare.
Yeah, my only question, well, one, great presentation, thank you, it's good to hear the updates and the amazing life touches. How are we doing on room there, is my only question. Are we full? Do we have plans to expand it? Hopefully we're moving people on, so we have plenty of room is my hope, but at the same time, the real need. And so how are we doing on that?
Yeah, that's a great question that we're challenged with daily. In January, we only had 3 days that we were completely full. In February, we've had only 1 day where we were completely full. We're still in February, but we have 2 open today. And so I think we would see entries and exits more evened out if we weren't having a housing crisis. But that has really crippled us in our ability to move people on. So doing other things like the 20 mental health beds, we probably need to expand that or look to the state on, those guests aren't gonna move on as quickly. And so we have to figure that out. And we don't have enough room for the need. So, that's the community discussion about, do we expand? Do we invest in the housing so we don't have to expand beds? But we are usually not full.
Gotcha. And one of the questions, my final thing is that, so when we formed CHAB years ago, there was a lot of different reasons involved, but one of the main ones was to help our community find a safe place that we can come together, collaborate, work together. How do you feel that's happening? Just if you can share honestly, do you feel that we're working really well with our other community partners, our 501c3s, or is people who, we have a lot of people stepping up with a lot of great answers, but if we're not doing it together, then I believe we're wasting a lot of resources.
Yes, I have seen a ton of momentum with the community, from Reno Rodeo Foundation to the Pennington Foundation. Grace Church has been a huge supporter of us. I think we need to continue to work on communication and processes between campuses, because it gets really confusing when we're full or they don't meet eligibility criteria. So I think we need to continue to work on that. But as far as, the state has really become much more involved with the campus, and how can we help and how can we expand, from talking about housing options on the campus, those types of things. So I think we've gotten a lot of enthusiasm in the community, and people want to be involved, and they call and ask how they can help. So it's really been phenomenal to watch.
Oh, good job. Thanks for the report. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just briefly, Ms. Howell, I just want to say thank you. I think that we can all, as a community, be very excited about not only the facility, the people who are there have an opportunity that I think we can all be very happy and honored by. I've had the chance to go out there a couple of times, and it's just a true community. It's a very loving and warm space. I'm hopeful that we can expand it over time as a region. Obviously, there are great people at Rise doing a lot of good work in that facility, and then the county is coming alongside. So I just really want to thank you for that. I didn't understand one of the responses that you gave about the capacity, and so I just want to understand that better. It sounds like on any given day, there are one or two maybe beds, or I don't know if you would call it a unit for guests to be sheltered in. What is the sort of projection? How do we figure out a way for people to exit the back door of the facility and into supportive housing? Is that your comment about the lack of affordable housing?
Yes, and I probably wasn't as clear as I should have been. I think that, 18 months ago, it would have been easier for us to have someone come in, stabilize them, and move them into housing. But because we're having such a difficult time placing those in housing, we don't have as many beds that free up. So the question becomes, are we in a place where we need to expand and have more beds at the campus or invest in housing? Because there are, today there's 32 women that could go into housing if we had it. So I think we're in a little bit of a pickle with nowhere for them to go.
Well, in those 32 women, what is the housing price point that we are looking for to meet that need? Meaning, how do you take those folks who are ready to go after having been stabilized, finding the opportunities that you've presented there? What is the price point that they would need in order to find stable housing outside of the facility?
So we've used a couple, the presentation that Monica just presented on that program has been phenomenal for us. But we are seeing for individuals, I don't have the exact numbers, but you have to have first and last month's rent, and then you have to have, 3 months worth of rent too. I mean, just excessive prices to get people into apartments. And we've had times, some of the recidivism numbers where clients or guests were going into these apartments and then the landlord raised the rent on them, during their lease. And so that puts them back. So we don't have any control around the rental prices. And so, we're trying to, and we want to put them in a place that's healthy and safe and those types of things. So those are the challenges that we're having. And I think there's phenomenal work going on at our place. It's just, what's life after our place and where are they going, and how do we start investing in that?
And I know that it's something like $17 to $20 an hour is 60% AMI. Are the folks who are ready for housing, are they working, and could they possibly move into that 60%? Are they at the 30% AMI, the very lower cost housing that they would need?
It really depends.
Okay.
We have some individuals that get Social Security disability.
Sure.
Some of them are working. If they have Social Security, they can't work that much because then they lose their Social Security. Some have no income. And so it's really a variety. We've seen guests that have a pretty steady income
Right.
coming in. It's just managing their money, prioritizing those types of things, which is why the case management is so critical for them to start saving so that they can move out. So that's a challenge as well.
Right. And I know that when we did our strategic planning workshop, we were told it was about 25,000 homes that we need online for 60% AMI in the region. So I know that that's the main need in the community, but just to try to help with Councilman Reese's question.
I often need help getting to the point, so I don't mind the conversation. I guess I'm trying to put a very fine point on the issue, which is the 32 women that you say are there now and have the ability to exit. Are those folks who need, supportive housing, or are they folks who are looking for just affordable housing? I mean, these words get used and then the context is lost. So I'm trying to figure out, I understand the difference between supportive housing and affordable housing being two different things. Are the folks that you're focusing on, are those folks who need a supportive housing environment to go to, or are they just trying to find housing writ large?
So, it's D, all the above. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a person-centered model, so it's whatever their scenario is. There is a chunk of those individuals that can live independently, and then there's a slice of them that need supportive housing ongoing, depending on, what their challenges are. So it's like a menu. We have to have a menu of different housing options, because people are requiring different things, and before they came into our place, weren't stable on their meds and weren't, using their funds appropriately. So it's kind of all of the above, of what we need.
I suppose ultimately, as a policymaker, though, we're tasked with trying to figure out, a choice between varying options, right? And if your suggestion is we need more of the supportive and less of the affordable, I know we need all types of housing, quite frankly, and the number that Commissioner Hill is referencing, I think, is one that is, very stark. And so as we as a region start to address different subpopulations, we're going to have to make choices about which one of them we invest in first. And it sounds like, at least from the conversations that we've had here and some of the conversations at Reno Housing Authority, that supportive housing component is perhaps the most dire. And I'm saying, if you think it's different than that, you have to tell me that. Because I don't know which one of those things, if I have to choose between two types, supportive housing, we know that we all want housing. The housing first model is something we have talked a lot about. We need to make sure that we're addressing it in the right way.
So to answer your question directly, we need more supportive housing than affordable housing.
For our place.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. We really appreciate your time, and thanks for clarifying your needs, and great job. I'm really excited about the work you're doing on the campus.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, there's a board update and discussion on the Nevada Cares Campus Emergency Shelter. We have Pat Cashel, and my understanding is also, Pat, do you have additional speakers coming up with you? And Dana Searcy. So Dana, are you starting out? Okay, great.
So as we continue to discuss, these are the priorities of the campus right now. Staffing and training, safety and security, managing our capacity, and partnership development, because we all know that we cannot do this alone. So much has happened over the last month since we last met. Mostly, we have been focusing on a little bit of massaging around people and capacity to make sure that we have what it takes to get through this winter. So I am very pleased to say that we have been able, with the help of many different groups helping in this effort, to establish a women's dorm. So the D dorm, that most southern dorm, is now set up for women. There are 85 beds. There are currently 79 women. We've worked with VOA in partnership. We're moving beds around as we are able to make sure that every bed remains full. But that is the most amount that would fit inside that dorm, at which point we would be full inside the Sprung for women, but we do have our overflow also set up. Our mod pods are here. We're gonna share a little picture and more information on those. And then, as just mentioned, the overflow. So that opened a few weeks ago. There's currently 52 beds. It's been close to capacity, but it is holding us. And COVID, as we're all too familiar with, the last month has been quite a struggle, but the campus has been pretty calm, honestly. We've all had our fun adventures through this, but I would say mostly it's been a staffing challenge and a balance to make sure that as staff became sick and ill, we were able to adjust and cover for each other. At the COVID plan right now inside the building, we've had 6 vaccine clinics. Flu vaccines are also being offered at those times. Anyone with symptoms is offered a rapid test while they're there on site. As we know, transportation is maybe not so wise at that point. And like many of us, rapid tests became something that we didn't have for a couple of weeks this past month, but that has been replenished now. We also have an isolation area. About 4 people can fit in there. And the idea is that if you test positive, then you can go to that area outside of the Sprung and wait for COVID housing to open up in the region. And then also we have a plan in place if we were to experience a large surge inside the building for separating larger populations. Also, we're preparing for construction. So construction right now is slated to begin the first week of April. It will be significant at best. We are dividing the Sprung in about 4 different sections. So right now, all the case managers, all of our food service and daytime area space will all be emptied up for this first initial phase of construction. And I will be bringing back to you guys next month a comprehensive construction update with price estimates. Our first bid is due this week to be opened up on Wednesday, so we'll have a lot more information there coming in March. And then also our partnership and volunteer development. We have been working through the MOU process, agreements on place, who's coming on, where are they to be, and what are these partners doing in exchange for their time on campus. So there's many already in place. Happy to go through those if you'd like to, many underway. And then our volunteer development. We are currently in the middle of interviews for that analyst position, so we'll be very excited to introduce you to that effort in the coming weeks. So, exits from Safe Camp. This is our data from Safe Camp. As you can see, we're maintaining just about 60% of everyone entering the Safe Camp is exiting to permanent housing. I won't spend a lot of time on these slides, but those slides are now our standard data that will be pulled every single month and will be posted on our website and shared with you. This is a picture of the inside of a Mod Pod. This is actually on site. There are 36 here. Many of you have probably seen or been to the site. They have started the assembly process, and the remainder are due some this week and some early next week. So we anticipate that in the next 2 weeks, we'll be moving everybody back over to that temporary site. This is a picture of the overflow. There are actually 4 bays now set up. And again, this is able to be expanded should we need it. This is what we're going to use right now as our John DeCarmine recommendation. It was requested last time that we kind of show what were those recommendations and where are we in that process. There is a lot here. So staffing is definitely the #1 priority. You're all very much a part of that and are familiar with the large effort to increase staffing on the campus. Diversion is currently happening. So we've kind of got this split a little bit. We have put into our county budget request flexible funds for diversion. That's why it's in process. And a full, complete diversion program has not been implemented yet, and that's why it's on the not started. So you'll see this change as we continue to grow and move through this process. So we'll review the in-process, again, staffing, diversion, the performance metrics. We've got this in process because there are 2 or 3 that we are not able to report on yet, but those are underway. And also the smaller zones you will see at the next construction meeting next month. When we give you that update, there are 6 small sections now inside the Sprung building to help separate different populations and different needs. This is your staffing levels at the CARES campus. And the intent of this slide really is to show you all of the positions that have been approved for the campus and emphasize that we have a long way to go before all of those positions are filled, but we'll keep you up to date on our progress. These are those graphs that we've previously shown to you guys, that unduplicated client served. Really, the point of this is just to show what we would expect, that as the winter cools down, we're seeing less movement amongst the population. So we've got 600 beds, about 900 of those are staying fairly consistent. That's very different than what we see over the summertime months. And more importantly, those bed nights. We're at 17, almost 18,000 heads on beds. It's a lot of care happening inside that sprung. This does not include the overflow. This is average clients by gender. And I think really what we've experienced is that our women's population, we're kind of leveling off and we're not seeing quite as much change over the winter time. And this is exits. So one thing that we do know about the campus is that it's very transient, right? For example, we know every first of the month, we see a lot of people leave as they've received their checks. They have some money in their pocket. They might do something different. And then they come back a couple days later. And so what you're seeing on this graph, if you're looking at the higher number there, that kind of 150 exits, every time I come in and I leave, I get counted as an exit. So if I go to the campus and I stay 3 or 4 days, I get warm, I take a shower, I'm good, I'm gonna go do something and I leave, that's 1. If I come back and I stay another week and then I leave, that's 2. So you can see that with such a very, again, transient population and a lot of movement in our community, we'll see those numbers stay high. There are still kind of that untold story here. There was 2 exits to a temporary or a substance use program also in December. So there's that kind of thing too, right? Sleeping on my friend's couch, going to a transitional housing program, all of those things they're better, maybe more positive than the shelter, but still not that permanent housing number, which is how we're gonna standardize as a recommendation from multiple partners, Built for Zero, John to Carmine, all of that. So that light blue number that you're seeing, really this is your baseline, and what we're hoping is that as we start to invest in staffing and in additional resources on campus, we should start to see that number increase. And then with that, I'm gonna turn it over to our guests, Leo and Pat.
Good morning, everyone. Pat Cashel, Regional Director of Volunteers of America, and my boss, Leo, CEO of Volunteers of America. And I'm going to let him go first. I've lucked out. I only have a couple slides, so.
Okay. For the record, Leo McFarland, Volunteers of America. And I'm assuming this button, here we go. So these next few slides are going to talk a little bit about the staff, who we are, what we do. And to follow up on Dana's point, one of the things you saw earlier was a report on positions, hired positions. And the data you were seeing up there was from the June 1st starting point till now. And starting in June to today, we've hired over 65 additional staff. But the turnover ratio has been exceptionally high. In those 6 months, that 6-month period, 63 people have transitioned out of those positions. Not necessarily all the new hires, some of the existing staff who might have found other placements in the community. But we are constantly hiring on a regular basis, 10 to 11 people a month. But the turnover is exceptionally high at this facility. So nobody's sitting on their hands on this effort. 65 people hired in 6 months, 63 not still there. So it's a very difficult program to engage folks in, to stay, sort of making it a career of sorts. But that's an activity that we are very much involved in. But the people we have in place, our case managers, are doing remarkable work. You know, they sit down and we've seen about a little over 1,600 different people come through the shelter since June. And the case manager's responsibility is to sit down with each and every one of those and do a deep dive and develop a case plan for each of them. And some of the data that Dana showed talked about the length of time that somebody stays in the shelter. I think that over 800 of the clients of the 1,600 have stayed in the shelter less than 21 days. That's the average stay, 21 days. For anybody who's staying beyond that, the average is 71 days. And so those are the folks that the case managers are making significant progress on in terms of the next case steps. So we address each of the client's situation by providing trauma-informed care, which is all the best practices across the country, getting to know their past, developing a unique plan for each individual. Not to read this all off, but the VOA conducts intake to determine where the client is coming from, what the development plan should be for that individual, what we need to do. We're finding that the majority of the people coming into the shelter program don't have ID, don't have their Social Security information, and much of the work we do is tied to those activities. Those are very important elements to helping somebody find that next level housing. A perfect example of the challenge with Social Security is the Social Security office today is open 2 days a week, and they limit the number of intakes to 10 a day on those 2 days. So for our current 600 persons in the shelter today, we can only on average send 20 a week to Social Security to start the process, the paperwork process. And then eventually it comes through. So it's very important that the population stabilizes in the shelter for any length of time so we can complete all the work necessary to get those basic things that they need, Social Security information and ID. Of course, working with the DMV to accomplish all that during the era of COVID, again, extends the time for these guests to complete what they need to do to provide the substantial next step information for a landlord to accept somebody into housing. Housing solutions, this is key. And I really appreciated the slide I saw from the Our Place presentation a little while ago, that it listed all the different places that people are referred to out of Our Place. Similar to Our Place, we're making significant referrals out of the shelter system into a variety of housing solutions that aren't necessarily captured in some of the data that you're seeing here. Because from a HUD standpoint, only certain placements measure up to the HUD level. So our Sage Street shelter, for instance, the last 3 quarters, we've moved 66 individuals out of the CARES campus into Sage Street. Those aren't captured in the HUD dollars. So I think we need to make sure we're doing, from reporting out on the CARES campus, a better job of showing all the different places that people are sent to. Transitional housing, health care for those that are significantly disabled, et cetera. And I think we'll do a better job in the future identifying all the places that people are moving to out of the shelter. The transportation, the ID transportation, this is all very, very important stuff. And it's very important that the clients maintain time in the shelter so we can complete all this and make the successful referrals. These are some of the issues that we're dealing with. You've got chronic health conditions for the majority of the population. Do you know that there are over 643 individuals 55 years of age or older currently in the shelter today? Now that means these are the people that have the highest level of physical conditions, disabilities, mental health services, substance abuse, the chronic health conditions that really prevent somebody from easily moving to affordable housing as opposed to permanent supportive housing. Plus the fact that, you know, we have a combination of single beds and bunk beds in the shelter. Anybody who's over 55 and is in a walker, in a wheelchair, we're not able to put them in the upper bunks. So we really are constantly sort of struggling with how to make sure that somebody who's disabled is able to stay comfortably at the shelter. But VOA case management takes all of these factors in consideration when helping an individual. So we're really needing to find the right proper presentation or proper referral for that individual so it'll be successful, so we can eliminate this revolving door system for folks coming in and out. Everybody who gets into the system gets placed on potential housing registers in the town. And you've already heard today that you're 25,000 units of affordable housing on the low side, what you need in this community. So affordable housing is critical. But I will also throw my support in the fact that permanent supportive housing is a critical issue. And if you're going to do some investment, we need to look at permanent supportive housing. So when you balance those things, affordable housing versus permanent supportive housing, the price tag on permanent supportive housing is pretty significant on a year in, year out basis. The cost of investing in affordable housing pays off at a better return on investment. Your better ROI is on affordable housing. But we have such a need that they both are important, but obviously because of the conditions that we find our client population in, the permanent supportive housing is something that I would put number one on the list. Staffing pattern. I talked about a little bit about the staffing pattern. We're hiring in 10, 11 people a month. We're still losing 9 to 10 to 11 people a month in terms of staying in the position. But I want to thank very much the county for working with us as of January 1st. They've allowed some repositioning of existing funds to allow us to raise the wages we're paying by several dollars per hour. So this is very, very helpful and should help stabilize, hopefully, going forward, that staffing position. Again, my great thanks. So from that standpoint, here's what we do. We do job and career fairs, worked on staffing bonuses, wage increases. All of this is critical to stabilizing that staffing pattern. Ideally, we would want about 114 individuals. I think that's the ideal staffing pattern. We remain at 75, 76, 77. It's a constant battle, but we're working hard doing all of this. And we have a jobs fair coming up, I think, next week for the next round of potential hires. Staff training, once you get hired, within the first 5 days, those first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 items occur in the first 5 days of training. And then an additional 2 weeks of shadowing with existing staff for each individual that's brought on. The CPR and first aid is something that happens on a quarterly basis, and we catch up with everybody. But those others, the training, the de-escalation, critical de-escalation training, obviously shelter rules, mental health crisis, how to deal with this. All of this training happens in the first week of an employee coming online. Added values. Obviously, when you run a shelter and you deal with human beings, you want it to be the most pleasant experience that they could, experience. Always showing love and care and support for each and every individual. Holiday times are no different. We've worked very hard to make sure every person at the CARES campus during the holidays received Christmas gifts. I was pleased last month to see what Safe Ground was doing with the Christmas holiday stuff. That is also something we duplicate there at the CARES campus. Animal services and the like. So it's more than just a shelter bed. It's actually trying to make sure that people feel like human beings when they're there and are treated as such, and find that they're loved, and because of that, they tend to do much better. I'm going to let Pat jump in here and talk about Reno Works, which was it we were able to start up again at this point.
Thanks, Leo. So as everyone knows, Reno Works was started back in 2015, and due to COVID, we had to shut that down for the last 2 years. It's one of my favorite programs. It helps individuals, gives them a way to recover by addressing employment as well as social and emotional issues. The current class we have of Reno Works is, we took 8 this round, and I can tell you 6 of them came from the CARES campus, because in this round we decided to open it up to the community. Everyone from Hopes to Our Place to whoever wanted to send us an applicant, we took them. So, but out of the 8, 6 of them actually came from the CARES campus. Which one did I push here? Something else we just started at the CARES campus was a grant from RTC. VOA purchased a wheelchair accessible van to increase transportation options for our clients. The grant itself covers all the related expenses, including the purchase of the van, gas, maintenance, van wrap, et cetera, and the driver as well. It's designed to offset and alleviate work from RTC while also allowing VOA to better serve our clients' transportation needs. The van will follow a set route to include stops at locations like the Community Assistance Center, DMV, Northern Nevada Hopes, Community Health Alliance, Social Security and welfare offices, and other stops that we deem necessary to help someone with their needs in the community. What you see over here is kind of it's not the set schedule. We have a set schedule now, but to get this handed in on time, we just gave you an idea of what a week of transportation looks like. So I think that's it. So any questions or?
Councilmember Reese.
Thank you. I do have a few questions, and I'm not sure if it'll be for Mr. McFarland or for Ms. Searcy, but I suppose I want to focus on the concept of exiting, because we've had that conversation with Our Place. I saw a slide in the Our Place presentation. There was a safe camp discussion that was quite high, I think nearly 60%. And then I get to the one where it's emergency shelter, and it's at 5.6%. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, what are we trying to measure and how ought we measure it, right? If Mr. McFarland, you're right that there are referrals that are not being tracked because they go to housing or other care facilities that are not maybe HUD related. I mean, as a body, we're trying to look at regionally all of these different programs, whether it's Our Place, whether it's the CARES campus, whether it's the Safe Camp. And of course, what we're hoping for is, 100% exits, right? We want to be in a community where some of these programs work themselves out of existence by their success rate. So help me to understand what I'm to take these varying numbers to mean, and how ought we, find a successful outcome. I mean, in one way, I see the numbers, and it suggests to me that the more individualized attention that a guest receives, the more likely they are to be able to safely exit. And then, I even heard Ms. Cochran's comment this morning about the individual approach is really what gets successfully people connected to the type of service. And then I see slides that say the county is doing an awesome job of adding staff. VOA, it sounds like, has been adding staff. So these are related concepts to me, and I just would like to get your thoughts on it so we can, have an informed discussion about how do we successfully help people to not need these programs, which is our ultimate goal.
So a couple of different pieces of that. One, I would say that, as mentioned, there are a lot of positive exits from the campus that are not necessarily permanent. We pulled the data for December. There was 1 to a substance use program and 1 to a temporary housing program. In addition to the 15, if we pull that back up. That's okay, they've taken it down. But, so there was 15 to permanent locations. There was 2 to temporary locations. Again, that's what's tracked in HMIS. That's how our community has asked us to, define how we look at outcomes, define how we track the progress of programs. What we are seeing in the Safe Camp is a low barrier shelter that is appropriately staffed. We don't have any openings right now at the Safe Camp. There's appropriate case management. We're not dealing with fire drills constantly, and staffing levels that take us away from the focus of housing people. Another thing that we all know is that transitional housing is not as supported as it once was, because it is by nature temporary. That doesn't necessarily mean that these programs are not useful. Many of them have very specific things like substance use, treatment, and that kind of thing that can be very beneficial. What we see is at the end of that, a lot of those people wind up back at the CARES campus. Another thing that we're seeing at CARES that we're not necessarily seeing at the Safe Camp or our place, and I shouldn't say that for the Safe Camp because it's kind of a different animal, but the CARES campus captures our most in need, our most chronic, right? They are all centralized in this one very large location that right now doesn't have enough staff to make sure that we are always focused on those permanent housing options. And again, what one permanent option for someone might look like is different for someone else. I agree with what everyone says, those supportive options, whether it's just a little bit of support or a lot of support, whether it's on the cognitive side or the disability side, those are where we're finding we're placing people into something that maybe isn't just quite right. Maybe they don't have enough support. And so even if we can get them housed into an affordable housing situation, we're finding them back on the street in a couple of months because they didn't have that case management checking in on them or they didn't have the appropriate support on site. So there is not a lot of permanent housing happening right now at CARES. All of us, we work as a partnership, I agree. The case management staff does an amazing job with what they have on site in a situation that includes 600 very high needs individuals. And not that they all are, but there is a much greater percentage in that CARES campus than in any other program in Reno. So, and that's what, so supportive housing, number 1 priority across the board for all of us. And making sure that we have enough case management and frontline staff. I tell this story because it sticks with me a lot. I asked John once to Carmine, we were looking at the designs of the buildings and how many sections do we have and who's in which one and, how many ADA bathrooms do we need? And he just looked at me and laughed and said, they should all be ADA because if your staff is spending 1 minute trying to disrupt the fight between they took a bathroom that they didn't really need and now the person who needs the ADA bathroom can't use that one, that is 1 minute away from working towards permanent housing constantly. And so really that's what we're trying to do is make sure there's enough staff and that facility is designed to really support that housing.
And Councilman, I would also state that back to Dana's slide on the John DeCarmine recommendations, since the county took over the campus in September, we still haven't started that strong housing focus with each client. And we also are looking at still needing to hire 29 county staff on site to help with case management. So I think we're creeping towards those outcomes, but the structure that we're putting into place, which I am like amazed with, by the way, Dana, how much you've added since our last meeting, it's still not there.
Well, and I think the county is doing amazing things, right? The change in sort of design, some of the design elements, the hiring, the financial resources that the county has committed in the last several meetings, because as I don't sit on that body, but I do try to pay attention to it. It's very encouraging. I mean, seeing the financial commitment being made is one step towards, I think, an ultimate outcome. And as you continue to add those pieces, I suppose ultimately my point in asking is twofold. One is there's one narrative, and that narrative can be we don't have enough housing. And I think we all agree that that's true. But even in spite of that fact, we also now have had a more specific conversation now about supportive housing versus other housing types. So now we know that might be the focus. We also know that there are some of these programs, and I'll use the Safe Camp as the example, that are exiting at a much higher rate. So it can't be that we don't have housing if they're making exits at that high of a rate, although it can be a factor, right? And I'm saying kudos to the Safe Camp for their successful outcomes. It sounds to me like at least one part of the problem is not so much housing or the lack of it. We know that is true for our region, and we hear a lot of numbers being used, but it can't be the only thing, right? And you've also hit on sort of the cyclical nature of folks exiting, entering, exiting, entering. And that is also something that as policymakers, we're going to be challenged with trying to figure out what are the best solutions. So at the end of the day, we all want for the most successful exits, the highest number we can. We got to figure out how is one group, Safe Camp, very high, others maybe not as high. We heard about our place having 32, I think, women that could exit today. Are those 32 competing with the Safe Camp 32 for the same pool of beds, and somehow Safe Camp got in a little ahead? Meaning I don't want to see artificially inflated numbers either, because in part, and this may ultimately go to my last point, and then I'll turn it over to other members who may have much better questions. If, for example, the city of Reno committed to expanding the village on Sage Street, and we had a gentleman there who's successfully using that facility, and we've said, hey, we're going to go open another 100 units. Well, presumably, those 100 units would be places for the 32 women in our place to exit to fairly quickly, from the Safe Camp to exit to fairly quickly. But if those aren't the type of units you need, you got to help us know that. And Ms. Searcy, you are doing a tremendous job. Every time I'm in this room, I am blown away by your ability to articulate the vision, your ability to answer hard questions, and the county deserves an incredible amount of thanks for the work that you're doing. And I know you would just turn around and say, well, it's all the other people. Fine, but you're doing awesome. So thank you for that. And so hopefully I've made my point and you understand where I'm coming from with the questions I've asked. I do have other questions, Madam Chair, but I know our other members probably have better and more questions.
Yeah, a couple pieces. Thank you. In the effort of it's all of us, I thank you very much. You know, to put it in perspective, a lot of this staffing shortage, right? This is imperfect data. This is what we have right now.
Right.
This is pulling directly from HMIS. Of those 156 was, unsuccessful exit, not permanent exits. About 140 of them, we don't know where the person went to. So, it is possible that either through, not enough staff to track all of this in a very large database, or people just leaving and finding their own way, right? We know that a lot about low barrier also, is that a lot of people do self-resolve. So as we start to dig down, we do hope to be able to give much better information about what is happening with that 156 people and how can we start to shift that bar. And to your question about Safe Camp or comment, absolutely. There are, at one point, there were 15. I'm sure we're about a dozen at almost any one time that is ready to be housed at a Safe Camp also. And so percentage-wise, that's pretty close to the women at our place. And they absolutely are competing for the same resources. And just as Amber Howell mentioned earlier, it really is this menu of, is Sage Street an appropriate option? Great. If there's 50 units, CARES Campus, our place, Safe Camp, everybody's going to be competing for those units. And so that's what we do as a community, and that's really our Built for Zero, that case conferencing work where we gather everyone around the table. There are 3 of those meetings a week focused on different clients. One is vets, one is our TAY youth group, one is going to be starting up for the CARES Campus, and one is very specific, the whole community queue. So that's looking at everybody at once. But that's where we look at that list, figure out who's at the top, the most in need, the most chronically homeless, and where can we get them into an open bed. And that's how we should be charged with working together to make sure that they're utilized in the most appropriate way.
Thank you. And I think Councilwoman Jardin has a question on the phone.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My questions actually were very similar to Councilmember Reese's, and I was being a little thrown off by the percentages because and I'm understanding the differences in the populations and the differences in the tracking of the exit, but there was such a stark difference between the approximate 60% exit from our place and Safe Camp versus, and math is not my strong suit, but it appeared to be about a 2% exit from Nevada CARES Campus. I'm not confident that it's all related to a lack of housing, because there's been successes on the other two. So I too, like Councilmember Reitz, feel like the staffing is the biggest thing, and it's this catch-22, which VOA is really attempting to hire a number of people, but because you can't have a huge number of people that get hired all at once, it then puts strain on the already understaffed group that are there. And it's just this cyclical, tough situation that they're in. I'm confident they will get there, and I think they're doing some pretty drastic things as the city is helping them and the county, et cetera. But the staffing really does seem to be the focal point, which we've been talking about for a while. So aside from doing the job fairs, and I know there's been bonuses and an increase in pay rate, can Leo or Pat or anybody else give us some more insights as to the reasoning why such drastic turnover, other than just such a stressful environment and being understaffed? Is there any other factors that we need to be looking at?
Yeah, this is Leo. I'm going to respond to that. This has been a very difficult run-up to a 600-bed shelter. You know, we transitioned over about 69 staff at the time that the CARES campus first opened, and we got the staffing level up to about 75 immediately after that. But what we found during this 2-year COVID period, and just what every business in the community is experiencing, is this either folks found that there were other employment opportunities to shift to. I just heard a story from one of our very valued employees who left us, who was working at a restaurant, and so the conversation went, you know, why did you leave us? And he said, every morning I woke up, I didn't want to come to work, because what I saw on site with the level of disability that our clients were dealing with, it just brought me down. I just wasn't encouraged to come to work because I saw so much pain and suffering in that 600-bed campus. It just wasn't for me. It didn't fit my personality, and that's why I decided to take this job. Less stress. I didn't worry about my client, you know, because I would lay up all night long trying to think, how am I going to help John, who is in a wheelchair? He's a veteran. There's no resource for him, and it was just depressing. So I think a little bit of that comes into play, but it's a multifaceted challenge for us to stabilize the staffing pattern at about 100 staff level. But I do need to circle back to a comment that was made a little while ago about we haven't really initiated a housing effort in place. We've always had to have. That's the number one job, is for case management to sit down and say, what is the best housing referral that we can make for you from this shelter? It has always been there. In the 10 years we've been operating emergency shelters here in Reno, that's always the number one goal. So it has never changed. It's always the focus of every case plan is, this is where you are today. What does it look like 30 days from now? What does it look like 60 days from now? How do we get you from point where you are right now to housing? And that's exactly what we do every single day. I think what some of the things that skew the numbers are the high percentage of people who just don't stay consistently at the shelter. Over 800 people, less than 21 days on average, staying at the shelter. So, and Dana talked about that. You know, they're there for a week or two. We do all the preliminary work with them, then they sort of disappear for a few days. They just don't come back. Could be for any reason. Maybe it's the first of the month. They've got some money in their pocket. I don't ever want to overlay that issue on somebody, but there are reasons why people step away. And then, but those that stay, this is where you're making all your appropriate referrals. Those that are there for 60 days and above, and I think the average, high average right now is 71 days. So we're not seeing anybody who's in there for 150 days. 71 days is the average stay for somebody who's actually working the plan. And that's where you get your successful referrals to all of the different housing sources, all the different healthcare facilities, the VA, Sage Street, others, other programs. So that's happening. That's the number one goal. But in terms of the staffing, Councilwoman Jardin, it is a struggle because the nature of the population, people who are in great despair, oftentimes it doesn't work for everybody gets hired. And
I understand that. Thank you for that clarification on some of your processes. I think, our goal, and you actually said a couple of things that were interesting in your comments that help to Councilmember Reese's point, trying to really drill down on, why is it difficult to attract new hires, which I think we've come a long way in trying to address some of those things, but more trying to better understand how are we best building those individuals that do choose this as their profession to stay, to see the successes at the end.
Yes.
And so I appreciate that. Thank you. That was helpful feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. I was just simply stating what Dana had outlined on her slide of what John DeCarmine's recommendations were, which one of them was implement a strong housing focus with every person walking into the shelter. And I don't think that has been implemented, is my understanding from Dana. So I will go to Councilman Dare.
Thank you. What's the ratio on our caseworkers? I see the numbers and 74 employees is what we need to hire. We have 99 now, which for any business, that's a scary number. So you guys have done miracles with what you have. So we know, I give you that. But what are the ratio on caseworkers?
So there's currently, it's about 1 to 70-ish. And
Yeah.
if you look at, it gets worse if you consider how many new faces we're seeing every day. On average, in working with VOA, we're seeing 30 to 40 new intakes every day. That's a lot of turnover. But there's 10 case managers right now in the building.
Well, we know this, and that we can talk about numbers all we want. They're not going to change until we have a touch that actually can get in their life. You cannot, there's no way, with all the work I've seen and what I've been a part of, that's going to have the reaching effects that we want to have, similar to some of these other things. One of the things we know even about our other sites or shelters, they have a little bit more reach around, a lot more arms around people. So until we see that change, and so I say this, I'm not saying people are not trying. That's not even a question. Obviously, we've been talking about this. But I think this is a dire strait, and until we can find a way, in some real large way of pulling in and get our numbers a little more, we're not going to see anything different. I don't know. We can try, but I just don't think this is possible. One of the questions I do have is community involvement. One of the things I find when we can't have staff, we have churches, we have people, and I know for a time, from what I saw, the faucet was turned off because there was some things happening at the site that did made it to where people couldn't come in. I think I would challenge us to really rely on, and don't get me wrong, I get churches. I've been a pastor a long time, and they bring their own problems sometimes in a good-hearted way, But when we go in there, everyone has agendas and thoughts and things. But if we lay it out right and we do some training, while we're waiting for some of this to come, we can make a difference, and we can really see some differences by putting more arms around people. And I just would say, is this happening, or can we make a plan for this to happen? Because we can't wait for us to find 70 more employees so we can feel better about where we're moving forward. These are, obviously, these are lives.
Absolutely. We are also, for the record, working very closely with Councilwoman Weber on this too. When this analyst comes on board, that is all this person's going to be doing. And I think to Councilwoman Jardin's comment earlier, it's just this cyclical. If we bring in volunteers, then we need staff to train them and make sure that they're, in a safe place, and then that's a greater strain on staff. And, I think to Leo's point, the staff that are there are doing a good job. It's really just trying to make sure that we can narrow the focus of what's in front of you so that it doesn't feel so vast and so hopeless. If you've got, here's my 20 to 30 individuals that I'm working with, and I'm getting to know them and I understand them. And this is even on the frontline staff level, right? If you walk into that shelter and there's beds as far as you can see each direction, it can become very overwhelming. And so it's a huge piece. We know it. It's also a priority for us that it one, not be an additional thing that staff needs to worry about, and two, that we can do it in a safe and really positive way, because opening up those doors and letting partners on site, whether they're service providers or volunteers, is absolutely critical to the success that we really do want to see.
Thank you,
And
yeah.
if I can just add one more comment on the staffing, you know, another thing that we're noticing is we're seeing this story over and over about being able to keep those staff that are there. And so what we're trying to do is share the story, not all frontline staff, and not only for VOA, but also security and Karma Box, you know, trying to have our staff sit down with them and answer their questions and show plans on construction so that they can see, if you can hang on a couple years, we're gonna get there. Well, there is this vision, and you're part of it, and you need to understand it so that you can have that little hope in your heart as you're doing this very difficult job, right?
Yeah.
And when you see this construction update, I hope you'll be happy with some of the changes. We're gonna have to bring on quite a bit of modular buildings for staff, and we're trying to make sure that they're, you know, reasonable to work in, and having a break area to be able to check out and get away from the campus for a little while. You know, those things are important. And so I think between, you know, the pay and spending time with staff and having partners on site and sharing the word about what the campus will be one day, that's, you know, we took the first step, and now we still have a long way to go before we get there.
Thank you. I only have one more thought to throw out there, and it's just a thought of what was said earlier. I'm questioning if there's a big part of this population that's there that are in the wrong spot altogether. If we're dealing with, like you said, the elders, the physical, and we have mental health, they're never, I mean, that's not the clientele that we're going to be able to put a program that they can just lay out and run after. This is another group. This is almost more of a compassion moment. So I don't know the answer, but I do wonder if we're not careful, we're trying to take a group of people that should never be there in the first place. So just a thought I have from what I heard. Thank you.
Yeah, if I could, I just want to.
Go ahead.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the way you looked at it. You know, if I gave you the data from age 45 to the other data I gave you, because I had mentioned 640 some over 55, if I added 45 to 55, I'd add another 400 of our current clients that fit in that category. Now, when you're 45 years old and you've been living on the streets for 3 or 4 years, you're not 45 years old. You know, your body is really broken down. And so there's a lot of disabilities there. There's a lot of unmedicated issues, whether it be diabetes, any number of things. So this population is very disabled. And you're right, this is a very big challenge. And also, based on your comments from last board meeting, we have been working together on trying to figure out what those jobs are that the volunteers can plug into to make that happen. So we have been progressing on that effort. And as soon as we have that position in place, we should see that really enhance. One piece of good news I want to leave all of you is, I always look at the numbers of people who had short stay at a shelter such as this, who then leave and then come back and stay for a little while and leave. We're going to make progress with every one of them, because at some point they'll start hearing from the case managers and from the support staff, you're in this revolving door system. Why don't we get a little bit more serious and stick with us a little bit longer? Because you made 2 steps forward, then you took 2 steps back. Let's keep moving forward. And so the repeat people, don't discount them, because they're the ones who get it at some point. They're the ones who say, okay, I tried it my way. It didn't work for me. Let's try it your way. I'll stick this through another 30 days, and I'll do what you wanted me to do, which is take care of all those things that are necessary so I can be successfully placed somewhere. Don't forget, there are many barriers in front of every one of these individuals. Past rent issues, jurisdictional things with the law enforcement, things that we need to clear up. And that's where all the nitty-gritty work is done, is trying to clean up that past history, so that a landlord is going to look at you and say, okay, you can pay the rent, but in terms of all the character issues that otherwise would have prevented you from leasing, they've all been cleared up. And you show a history. You show a history of renting at Sage Street. If you're at Sage Street for 3 months, you're showing a history of, I'm paying my bills. Now when my opportunity comes in to move into a different residential capacity, I've shown a good track record of doing that. So there's all these pieces come together to make that successful referral.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Chairman? No? And Councilman Reese, you said you had a few more questions?
I do, and I want to let us continue on with our meeting, but I wanted to ask about the women's dorm. And so I think that's a very exciting update. It's not something I was aware of. It seems very intuitive. Obviously, we've had some issues and advocates who are rightfully concerned with safety on the campus. And so I suppose I'd just like a little bit more explanation of the women's dorm. I know at one point in time when there were talked about privacy screens that could be used in the facility or not. I don't know if that's still happening. And so I just want to give you the chance to give us a little bit more information about this focus on this population group, because I do think it's very positive.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, we were all very hopeful that we would be transitioning most of these women over to our place. And I think what we've all learned, both Amber Howell and I and our teams, is that the number of women that need help is just greater than what we thought. So, we have had more than 70 women in that campus for the last couple months. And we just made the decision that D dorm has a wall of lockers with doors on it. So it is completely partitioned off. They have their staff in there to make sure that there's no males coming into that room. Of course, they have their showers and restrooms also. And this is kind of a pilot. We're seeing how it goes. Obviously, it's a really large campus and a lot of turnover. We know we're going to need to work through couples. We have taken the stance that if you are a couple, you will be separated. We need to work through, and mostly we're doing that because, Pat and I are a couple now because I want to go sleep over there. We've got a lot of that kind of thing going on. But then we want to make sure that we've heard, we have one couple in there where the wife, they're married, is a caretaker. That's a different situation. And so we're working through those as needed. We will continue to work through those. And then also at our overflow, one of those garage bays is set up for women, and we separate them over there also.
Thank you, Dana. And I think you've taught me so much with this work. And one of the things that you always speak to is we really need to appreciate people who will work in this space and thank them and make sure that they're successful, because it's a special person who will work at this campus, especially when the campus is in flux. We have great plans for the future. Like you said, there's a vision that we're working towards, but it's a tough place to work right now. So I just want to state for the record, and I know that this board also feels the same way, we appreciate the folks who are working hard on site every day for those folks to make sure they're successful.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I can't see if somebody else has their hand up, so forgive me if I just interrupted somebody. Is there, I know that when we go through the Reno Works, and this is just tossing this out there for county staff to contemplate and VOA, is there an opportunity for the graduates of the Reno Works program to potentially work for VOA on site? They will have proven by that point their commitment and reliability. I know we sometimes do hire. I know that the city has hired people from the Reno Works program. So nobody has to answer now. I'm just thinking that they understand the individuals, the complexities of the shelter, and they will have proven their commitment to and reliability through the program. So,
Yes. All right, this is Leo. The answer to that is yes, and we have successfully done this before, particularly in the outreach positions, because it's one thing if you're outreaching to someone who's been chronically homeless, and you yourself have been chronically homeless, you're able to communicate and really make that conversation work, because people have more faith and trust in, you've experienced the same things I have. You somehow pulled yourself out of that, and what was your path to do that? So yes, we do encourage that, actually, and we would be willing to look at the graduates from the Reno Works, which we really have in the past.
You have, and
Yeah.
You've been successful at that, so thank you very much. And the last question, Madam Chair, is the status of the online capacity tool. And I know we had questions before about its update, time of day, and that sort of thing.
Our favorite topic. So we are working very hard on a more automatic update situation. Right now, it's reported from multiple different programs. It's brought in, it's entered into a spreadsheet, it's transferred to a tech service individual who can update our website. We've got quite the process going. So we are first working on I'm gonna put my number in VOA in the morning, and as soon as I put it in, it is then updated on the website, and there isn't this process. So that's the focus right this moment. And honestly, it did not make our priority list this month, but it is on our list to figure out those weekend updates.
Well, and just the daily updates, because I think I looked on it Thursday or Friday at about 1, and it hadn't been updated yet. I think it was around noon. So I was just curious okay, you're working on it. Great, thank you.
Thank you. And also, just to close out this piece, I think that, the discussion on folks entering in the shelter and leaving and coming back, and the fact that we have an opportunity to work with them and that they know that they can come back to this emergency shelter, I think is really important. And that failure, we all fail. And so figuring out a way that they have support and that they know that they can come to a place where people want to help them, that's what we're working towards. So I'm excited about those future opportunities with folks. Thank you. Okay. We're going to move on to item number 8, board member announcements, reports, and updates to include requests for future board agenda items. I just would like to see a housing presentation at our next meeting. I thought that the one that JD Klippenstein did for our board strategic planning session was really great, and I think it will help all of the jurisdictions understand our role in that housing spectrum and how we can support future housing in the region. And I'll go this side. What would y'all like to see?
I'm ready. So a couple of things. One, I've been approached by some elected officials on if we need to keep the CHAB board any longer. And I think that's a discussion we need to have publicly. I personally believe we get great value out of it. 2, one of the things, and it kind of was pointed clearly to me today by Councilman Reese, that the definitions, workforce housing, affordable housing, supportive housing, what do those mean?
I'm hoping that'll be on the housing update. I agree with you.
Because we all have to be thinking of the same thing on the same definition of what it is. And then I had a housing specialist talk to me 2 weeks ago, and he disagrees with the definition of AMI. So if we have we're speaking the same language, I think it helps us to achieve goals more. And then just a reminder, we've been at this for 8 months is all. This is quite a great progress and for what has happened. 8 months ago, this CARES campus didn't exist. 8 months ago, none of these programs exist. 8 months ago, we couldn't house 600 people.
We've tripled capacity.
Yep. I mean, to me, it's exciting to see how far we've come in such a short time. And a lot of that is Dana Cersei and her group there, because you guys have just done an excellent job. And we'll hopefully understand, some of our advocates will understand that, we're 8 months in. Imagine what we're going to look like at 16 months, 24 months, 30 months. I think there's big things to happen, and I think we're actually going to make a difference in the homeless situation in our region, and I'm excited about it.
Yes, thank you,
Other
Mr.
than
Vice
that,
Chair.
that's all I got.
Yes.
I just have one thing. I'd asked for it last time, and I know we didn't fit it on here, but I still think it's crucial on our youth. Our Eddie House, I know, is in the house, and I know that Inyap was here, Monica was here. I think one of the things again, my goal, and I remember when we talked about starting this, is to create a place where we can look at pulling these groups together. We can hear how things are going, speak into it, even in a sense, hold accountable to different groups of saying, how are you working together? What's the overall plan? And remember, our youth is one of those areas. These youth, we can stop them from being homeless And so that's one of the areas, but there's a lot of things, eventually, I'd love to even get our veteran work, find out how we're doing on that. And so, but one of the ones that's been on my heart quite a bit lately is our youth, especially during COVID, how we handle that, how's it going? And I'd love to see how that's coming together.
Thank you. We'll work to see if we can get some presentations on that. And Councilman Reese? And Councilwoman Jordan, do you have any items?
I do, thank you. If we could get an update on the online tool for its kind of consistent updating. I know that everybody's swimming in that direction, but maybe just an update with a consistent time of day when we can look to that tool as our marker of capacity. I do know there has been great work done by everything from the Downtown Reno Partnership and the additional ambassadors, cleaning ambassadors, park ambassadors, river rangers, clean and safe teams. So maybe an update from someone at the city of Reno that can maybe coordinate the additional personnel and the outreach efforts. I still hear a lot of people, that believe things maybe look or are the way they were 6 months ago, whether it's along the river or in our parks. And I know that's not the case. So maybe getting an update to this group as to the progress with regards to encampments along a river and in our parks. That would probably be a really good update.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll go to item number 9, public comment, and I'll throw it over to our clerk.
Madam Chair, first we have Wendy Reinhardt.
I'd just like to say that I wouldn't be where I am today if it hadn't been for my case manager at CARES Campus. Super good person, good lady. She was always there for me all the time. I didn't have to worry about whether I could get a hold of her or not. She had very close access to me. At CARES Campus, at first, there was no facility to do our laundry. And they opened that up. And that was an awesome, positive thing. Because I could clean my clothes. It wasn't my choice to be homeless. I wound up homeless because of family. But it taught me, I learned a lot from it, being homeless. And CARES Campus was there for me. If it wouldn't have been for it, I'd have been on the street. And so I'm really thankful for it, the facility itself. But I go back to my case manager, and it actually it's the individual. You have to do the footwork. You have to keep going in and talking to your case manager. You can't just back up and think they're going to do everything by itself. With her, she made it easy for me to be able to talk to her about absolutely everything. She got me my Social Security card. She got me my birth certificate. She got me everything that I needed to get in HUD housing in Section 8. And then after that, she and me doing footwork. Again, you got to go back to the individual. You got to want it. You want to get out of there. It's not a place where you want to stay the rest of your life.
Right.
You got to want to get out. And I would just keep going into her and talking to her. That's what you have to do, is you got to do the footwork, your own self. And so I did. I kept going in and kept going in. Eventually, me and my service dog, because I am disabled, she and I kept going into her, to the case manager, Nicole. She was awesome, person. I still get to have her for a year. I'm in my own home now. And I'm so happy to be in my own home, but it wouldn't have been that way if I didn't have my case manager, Nicole.
Thank you.
She was just awesome. And she still is. I get to keep her for a year.
Thank you.
But I'm in a forever home. I got a condominium. And I do say to myself, it was what I did. I told the women there at the shelter, if I can do it, you can do it.
Yes.
Um,
I'm so sorry, ma'am. You've got your 3 minutes, but thank you so much
You're welcome.
for speaking to us.
Next up, we have Carrie Lee. Okay, she's not in chambers anymore. And then we have Ron Tallarico.
How y'all doing today? Well, I would like to discuss what I've seen at that Volunteers of America tent with the 600 people. First and foremost, I've witnessed staff having sex with the residents there. I've witnessed them borrowing money from the clients there. I've personally been berated, harassed. There's been 3 sexual assaults, and they keep letting these people back in. Now, I understand if somebody has a past, they were convicted, it's in the past. But if they're doing that crap in the building, they should not be allowed in there, and they should be arrested. I've witnessed people shooting up heroin. I told the staff about it, and she had the audacity to call me a police officer or a cop, trying to make it out that I'm some kind of a narc because I don't want somebody, shooting up heroin and spreading AIDS or whatever else they may have or not. Either way, I don't want to find out, because in my opinion, safety is a concern, and that isn't safe. Okay, the fact that they're not allowed to search people when they come in, that's why there's people walking in there with knives. A few times there's been people walking in there with guns. Okay, I've even heard a staff say that she's bringing her own firearms down there. That is not a safe place. That camp, there might be a few successes, and I'm proud of those people. You know what I mean? But the bulk of that, no. That place is ran by junkies, sociopaths. I have video footage of them berating me, kicking me out for writing a grievance. I was shown video footage last night of some old guy walking in and choking one of the females there. And when people are yelling staff, it took them over 2 minutes to get there. I'm talking this distance is from me to you, ma'am. 2 minutes. Someone could die in that time. There was somebody caught killing a cat in that place. And the staff there did not even put it in their books. Because when I spoke with, what's her name, Shane, she came up and started talking to me. And I was on my phone, and I jumped a little bit. I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I have PTSD, so sometimes I kind of freak out. When I hear about somebody killing a cat and them not, and then she said she didn't even know about it. There was less than 12 hours that had gone by. How are they not knowing about that? There was a guy that was stabbed in the neck there back in September. The staff are like, you ever heard of the Three Stooges? Well, imagine 20 of them. Just, I don't know what to do. That's what's happening. And when I spoke with Alexis Hill about the guy shooting up the heroin, turns out that's a felony. And if that's a government property, he should have been arrested and charged with the felony. The staff there keep overturning that shit. I've seen so many. I watched a guy there about 2 weeks ago walk in there, brass knuckles, punch a dude in the face, run out the door, bump into staff. Oh, I'm sorry. And this dude's face is busted open. It's called incompetence. That is what I've seen now. Me personally, I've been there since August 16th. I didn't get to see a case manager until December. I mean, that's over 150 days. How come I'm not seeing a case manager? I've written over probably about 6 grievances, and I've requested all of them to be back within, with writing. Oh, sorry. But I'm going to be back here. I'm going to be back here next month, and I'd also like the email of anybody I could speak with so I can give you all the information I have on these people.
Thank you. Any other? Okay, thank you. Well, thanks everyone for another productive meeting, and we'll see you in March. We are adjourned.